This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. This podcast is sponsored by Lever Consulting, editing with a purpose. Check them out at leverconsulting.com for a free consultation.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Hi, I'm Jake,
And I'm Vee,
and you're listening to the It's Working podcast.
where we take deep dives into mental health, breaking stigmas, and starting conversations.
Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
We are not healthcare professionals, and our opinions should not be taken as facts or as medical advice. To see any sources, resources, or study we speak about in this podcast, please check out our website, linked in the description of this podcast. If you or a loved one is struggling, there is hope and there is help. Some helpful resources can be found on our website, linked in the description of this podcast. It's Working Podcast is a production from the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All opinions in this podcast belong to our hosts and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All right, guys, we are back. And it's been a while since we've had a bummer episode. So I thought I would just drop the bomb and we'll talk about grief and loss.
Oh boy.
You already look.
Bandage right off.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to walk into it a little bit, like, dip our toes in right now.
No.
But you're just like, hey, gang, you ready to get bummed?
Well, okay, so the thing about it is everybody deals with it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like to dip their toes in, like Jake here.
Yeah.
I like to dive in face first.
Oh, God. Belly flop.
Yeah, belly flop.
Ooh.
So let's start off by just talking about the basics of it, and then I know Jake has a lot of insight on some things that people don't typically think of regarding grief and loss. So everybody knows about the stages of grief, but how many stages are there? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think there's like 7.
Yeah, there's either 5, 7, or 9, depending on which study you would like to look at.
Although we teach 5.
I mean,
But
that was the standard back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But it eventually got expanded to 7.
Right.
And then expanded again to 9. I'm
Yeah.
sure by the time this episode is out, it'll be like 10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But let's stick with the 5, because I feel like most people are old enough to remember the 5.
Yeah.
And I feel like the 7 is just separating out some of the griefs into like subsects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
And I get it, because again, the stages of grief, it's not like you start with one and then you go through a list.
Yeah.
It's more circular, and for some people, they'll skip over ones and into other ones. It's more of a way of looking at how far a person is.
Or they experience it out of order as well.
Yeah. It's more of seeing how the person reacts to that loss,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them through all of the different emotions that they're probably going to feel. With the first one being the one that I am always stuck on, being denial.
Yeah.
It's the meme of the dog and the fire with his coffee. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
After that, typically, it's listed anger. And the anger is unpointed. Is something important to note, because sometimes people will be
Yeah.
angry at the person who's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll be angry at the situation. And sometimes they will pick a random person or a random thing in the universe and be angry about.
Or it's just quick to anger. Like, something could go wrong in like the daily
Mm-hmm.
routine, and now suddenly it's just like blown out of
Yeah.
proportion. Like, oh well, this is perfect.
The world is ending and everything is on fire.
Yeah.
But they're no longer okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me sounds like progress. After that comes bargaining. You know, people are always typically you see this a lot with religious people going like, hey God, I will do blank, do blank, blank, blank if you can help out with this.
Yeah.
And then look for signs. Potentially doing the thing, potentially not doing the thing.
Ooh, that's, yep.
'Cause that-
Potential, no, because it's like the potentially doing the thing, but potentially not doing the thing.
I mean, just because you're bargaining doesn't mean you're going to follow through.
If you do this, it'd be really cool, but I don't have to uphold my end of the deal, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see this a lot with breakups specifically. Because, you know,
Yes.
not every time you're grieving is because somebody died.
Mhm.
A lot of, hey, I will be a better partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not.
Things will be different. I can change.
No,
Yeah.
you're not. You're not going to be different. Things aren't going to change. You
Mhm.
can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
All right. And then comes the depression. And we're not talking about depression in the clinical sense, because
Mhm.
clinical depression isn't the same as the way we colloquially use the term. It's more of just a deep, longing sadness.
Yeah.
And like that's super important to know, because you don't develop depression just because you lose something. You're going to be
Mhm.
sad about it, and that's totally normal. Clinical depression is a whole can of worms in and of itself, usually due to improperly balanced brain chemicals.
Yeah.
But the symptoms are very similar. Like you're deeply sad, you lose interest in stuff that typically brings you joy. You find ways to not do the things that you're supposed to do. You see this a lot with avoiding brushing your teeth or general hygiene.
Mhm.
And
Not wanting to go out with friends. Is
yeah,
another one.
that's a good example.
So like isolating. That's yeah. It's a big part of it too.
Yeah, that's another key symptom. But after all the fog, you finally make it to the last one, being acceptance. And while a lot of people are like argue that acceptance doesn't actually ever happen, especially with death, it's more of like time lessening the pain in regards to it.
Right.
Like, acceptance doesn't mean that you're no longer feeling the pain of the loss. It just means that you're learning to cope with it in a way that at least allows you to live the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's like a dulling, I think, of the pain.
Yeah,
It's not completely gone. Like, you could still, like, access it if you try, but, like, it's not, like, on the forefront of the mind as often as it would be in all the other stages.
You're no longer praying to your above the being, giving him examples of how you'll be better if you get X, Y, and Z back.
Yes.
You're no longer skipping brushing your teeth because you'd rather take a nap. You're no longer cussing out the store clerk because they didn't have your brand of milk.
Oh my god.
Things are getting better.
Are you just saying, like, no,
I'm not giving personal examples. I'm getting examples I've seen on Reddit.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went deep down the rabbit hole with this one. But, I mean, who is surprised? Who? Nobody.
Certainly not I.
Nobody.
Certainly not I.
And then, like you pointed out earlier, doesn't happen in order. Doesn't happen in this particular order. And people bounce around. It kind of comes and it goes. And eventually, hopefully, everybody lands in acceptance and lives in acceptance.
Yeah.
Which
I think that's the goal, right?
I mean, that should be the goal. And then the way of getting there is also different for everybody. I know for me, it literally just takes time and food. And I know food is a terrible coping mechanism as your main coping mechanism. But it's my coping mechanism. I'm not doing okay if I am snacking in front of people.
Really?
Well, I don't usually like to eat in front of people because I'm self-conscious about my teeth. So if I'm showing my teeth off, it's a bad time.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give an example of, like, because we talked about, these are the 5, we teach these, right? The 5 common steps. I recently went through a bit of a loss, and I found myself I went through the 5 stages very rapidly. Yeah. I realized. I think that has something to do with another previous loss, but I'm not going to get into that one. About a week ago, our family dog passed away.
Oh.
And it sucked so much because it was on my birthday.
I'm so sorry.
That part sucked, but I'm okay. I'm not gonna say I'm fine. I'm okay now.
Okay.
Because I'm not fine with what happened, but I'm at least at a spot where I can talk about it and not break down. He was our dog for like 14 years.
Ooh, old puppy.
We've had him since I was like 10 years old. My sister was even younger. So we've only had the one dog. And we've never had to encounter this before. My mom has had animals before. My dad has had dogs before, but I mean, this one hit different. On my birthday, I got a call from my mom saying like he was sick and it was something gallbladder related. They had the option of like operating, but they didn't know if that was the move because he's so old, and they were worried that heart murmurs would like kill him with the anesthesia. So I got the call, and unfortunately, like my parents were really avoiding having this conversation, but I was the one that had to take that first step and be like, I think it's his time. He's old, like he's losing his hearing, he's blind in one eye, half of his face is drooping, like I think it's his time.
Oh.
The joy of life is not there, and realistically, if we have the surgery, how much time do we buy him at this stage? Like,
and then the recovery process.
And the recovery, we weren't even thinking about recovery, they just wanted him to be well again, but I'm like, what if there is no getting well at this point? Like, he's already having like, organ failure, like, it might just be his time. He's been on meds. He gave us 14 years, and so we then, after that shift on my birthday, after my shift ended at work, I went out to Davis and we sat with him. My mom and my dad and I. My sister couldn't make it because she was still away at college, so she FaceTimed him and got to say her goodbyes. But that was rough because I was already having to watch my father and my mother cry in the room, and I'm trying to be there, a pillar of strength. Like,
and then your little sister.
I'm not gonna cry. And then my sister on FaceTime starts to cry. I'm like,
oh no.
I got a little. I hate this, but like I couldn't let my mom see me cry, so I took my sunglasses and I put my sunglasses on.
You were that guy.
So I could cry.
Jeez.
It was like, okay, so also because of Dungeons and Daddies, like Daryl also puts on the sunglasses so he could cry. So I learned it from Daryl, but I put on my sunglasses so I would allow myself a few tears, and then I put them up and I wiped tears out of my eyes, and I was like, all right, that's it. But I found myself on the way out going through like almost all the stages, like in the span of us like leaving Davis. Like I went through all the stages. Like there was bargaining in the room, like, if there's another way, let it happen. Like, praying to the divine. Like, if there's a way for my dog to walk out of here in one piece, let it be so. But then that didn't happen. So then, as the procedure went, we're in the room. My dad's holding his paw. Like, my mom is petting him. I'm just sitting there, like, making eye contact with him because I guess that's how I chose to spend the last moments with my dog, was just like look him in the face and let him know everything's gonna be okay. And so then I watched as like, this is a real downer episode. I'm so sorry, you guys, but like I watched like the process of that. So then there was denial because there were moments where I could have sworn even after the injection had been given, I could still see his like chest heave, like he was breathing. But that was definitely denial because he was definitely gone.
Yeah.
So that's bargaining, denial. There was depression that set in real quick. As like there was a very like morbid sort of like I was numb as we were like paying and like walking out of the clinic.
They made you pay.
Well, so services rendered, right? Because they're gonna give us a paw print, and they're gonna give us his ashes. So we were paying for that. But and I also think because you have to pay for like the chemicals involved in the injection as well, but like they don't pay for like the service of like, oh, we killed your dog. They pay because it's like they overdose them on anesthesia basically.
Happy birthday, man!
Happy freaking birthday! As we were walking to the car, my mom and my dad are trying to talk to me, but I'm just hearing like static. Like I'm just sort of like, yeah, like I'm not there. The depression hit. and I'm putting on a brave front for them, my mom, my dad, and I watch as they drive off. And so I just sit there in my car for a little bit, really mulling it over, and then finally I just allow myself to feel all the emotions at once, and I condense them into a singularity, and then I just let them explode in a violent shout, and I punched my steering wheel almost so hard I was afraid that I broke my wrist or my steering wheel. And then I just am breathing heavy, and I look to the right, and there's a nurse on her lunch break that witnessed the whole thing.
Oh, no.
And I just sort of waved at her, and then I turned on my car, reversed, and left. And so then on the car ride back, I was able to get acceptance. This is what it is. This is what it is. My dog's not going to be home the next time I go visit my parents. This is the reality of things. And this was ultimately the best course of action, because you're right. How much time would we have bought? I had this conversation with myself.
Yeah.
How much time would have bought him realistically? So the acceptance was there. But I mean, all in all, I'd say that was probably an hour.
I think that's the quickest cycle I've ever heard.
Right?
But I'm very glad that you came to peace.
So quickly. I came to peace so quickly that the next day when one of our brothers was talking about what I did for my birthday, and she had mentioned something about a dog, I just started laughing, and then she was like,
"Oh no.
What? Why is that funny?" And then I was like, "Oh, you it's a long story, but basically we had to put our dog down yesterday on my birthday, and then she was like, Oh no. She felt so bad. I was like, no, we're past that. Honestly, if you don't laugh, you cry at this point, and I'm choosing to laugh because he had a good life. It's fine. But it was multiple things, one after another. Because the reason why she felt bad is because for my birthday, she got me a Home Depot gift card that had a dog holding a wrench in its mouth. It looked nothing like my dog.
Okay.
But she still thought it was ironic that she picked that one out because she knew how much I like dogs. And so she gave it to me, and then she was like, happy birthday, here you go. And there was this very sad, I don't know if I should even be giving this to you right now, but here you go.
But I am aware that this is inappropriate.
Yes, very much so. But yeah, so definitely felt them out of order.
Yeah.
Definitely went through the stages in, I think you're right, record time. But yeah, my whole family is still going through it. I think this is going to bother my sister for a while. My mom still gets a little misty. I was over at the house the other day, and she got a little teary-eyed when she realized, she went into the kitchen for something, and then she walked out, and she was like, he used to stand, right here, waiting for food. And I was like, it's going to be okay, Mom. My dad just chooses not to speak on it.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Very traditional.
Yeah.
And I would like to take this moment to point out that it is okay that you went through the stages that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay that it's going to take other members of your family even longer.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that's super taboo in our country is how quickly can you get over something? Not just the death of a beloved family member, in this case your dog, but a breakup. How soon after a breakup can you start seeing somebody else?
Are you asking me the question?
I am asking, in your opinion, how long is appropriate? Because I've heard a mathematical formula for what's appropriate.
Really?
Yes. Which is take the number of years you've been together, turn them into months. So if you've been together 2 years, 2 months is appropriate. If you've been together 5 years, 5 months is appropriate.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't even realize that I did that. I never heard of that formula, but
I mean, it's kind of spot on to what you were working on.
I gave myself 6 months because I really wanted to feel it, and I felt like a whole year was a little intense, but then 6 months was enough time to process, work on myself, figure out what's the next step, and then at that point I should be ready to go into another situation. So, but I mean, looking back, if I think about it, that is roughly the formula used was a month for almost every year. So,
and I think that's silly because is demonstrated in your example, everybody processes grief differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that it's stigmatized, that it's like a moral judgment on you how long it takes you to grieve is so dumb, because we all process differently. You went through the stages out of order,
Mm-hmm.
and publicly in front of a nurse in the car, but
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you were seen.
Oh my god.
Right now you're being heard, but right then you were being seen.
It's very different being seen. Well, also because I'm not yelling at the intensity that like I was yelling. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I rattled the car. Like I yelled so loud and I punched the steering wheel so hard. I imagine it was a sight. So I don't think it compares, honestly. The
But see-
retelling of the story to like what was. Like I feel bad that she had to witness that on her lunch break.
She'll have a story to tell people.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, like you're gonna be one of those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then another thing that comes up is people being like, how long you grieve is a reflection on the person who's gone. Which I also think is absolute baloney.
Mm.
Because that makes no sense. Everybody's going to grieve for that particular individual differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you make that judgment? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Because I'm sure that you were very, very, very in love with your dog.
Yeah.
He was your buddy. And
he was my adventure buddy, yeah.
And I'm sure your sister loved that dog very much, has seen by her multitude of tears.
Mm-hmm.
And your mother, and it's like, you're all very apparently grieving this differently. And so,
Yes.
did you guys have 3 different dogs? Or
No.
was there the one dog and you're all grieving differently about it?
Yeah.
And then I'd also like to point out that grieving somebody who's deceased is very different. I mean, the stages are the same, the brain chemistry is the same, but the impact is different. Grieving somebody who's alive versus grieving somebody who has passed on.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're grieving somebody alive, there's always that, like, little bit of hope after the acceptance that, you know, it'll work out, whether it be, like, a friendship or a relationship or, like, a mentorship.
Yeah.
That, like, hope that things will, like, somehow come together. But with a person who's deceased, unless you're in a particular religious sect where you truly believe that you'll see each other at another time, there isn't that little bit of hope. Oh, you were lost in thought. I am so sorry.
Yeah, I just did a little bit of a spacewalk there, gang. Sorry about that. Something that you said struck an chord in here, and I just followed that to the end of the thread. I apologize.
All right.
Let's go
ahead. On this tangent.
I'm gonna agree. Oh no, I don't think so. I don't think we have time for that. I'm gonna go ahead and agree with everything that you said because I trust you as a source. Yes.
What do you mean you
right.
trust me as a source?
I trust you to do your research thoroughly and for everything that you say to be some sort of semblance of the truth, factually correct. So I'm going to agree with you because I trust you to be right in this instance.
I mean, I am flattered.
Mm-hmm.
But what is, like, your main thought about the difference between grieving somebody alive versus grieving somebody dead? Because you have a very different universal belief set than I do. So I'd be interested in hearing your take on it.
Right. So that's okay. So I guess we are going to go down this thread that I was chasing.
I mean, of course we are. That's what this whole podcast is about.
You're right. I was just realizing that I don't grieve death. I don't. My family has lost grandparents, and we've lost, like, we've had our fair share of loss. But each time, we've only really given it maybe a day. I've only ever given myself maybe a day to, like, allow myself to be sad. And even then, there were some family members where I just was not sad.
Oh.
So, and it was not like that's going to sound really bad, but, like, it's not like I was in mourning, like, crying or anything like that. I think it's that I already had gone through the acceptance that they're gone, But because we believe what we believe, it's not something to be sad about. It's something to be rejoicing because their suffering is over. They're no longer like tied to a mortal body. Like in those instances, they died of natural causes, right? So it was a very long, drawn out, like going.
Yeah.
So their suffering toward the very end that like just is drawn out to such a point where it's like release at that point is a mercy.
Oh, I feel that. I remember watching my grandmother, who's more like a parent to me, die of cancer very slowly next to me.
Right.
And it was devastating.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, thank God she's no longer in pain. She's no longer constantly thirsty. Like.
Yes.
And so I think only people who've seen that can understand that too.
Yeah. It's exactly that feeling of like you've watched your loved one suffer for so long that while it hurts for them to be gone, at least now they don't have to endure all that pain and suffering. And so that is the part that I think even as early as like, oh my God, maybe 8, I just had like clarity in that. And so when my mom lost her father, my grandfather, who growing up, everyone has always said like, oh my God, you remind me so much of him. I look like him. I talk like him. I'm smart like him. I don't know. Like they just swear that he came back and I'm him. Mm-hmm. Like I'm his second life or something. But even though like hearing that every time should make me sad because he's not here, when he passed away, I was able to be comforted in the fact, in what we believe, that is, just because he's not here anymore does not mean that he is ended. And if anything, like his new life is even better because there's no more suffering and pain on that end. And so then every other relative that we've lost has always been hard. But the hardest one, I think, had to have been my dad's mom, because it was around the time that I was graduating and she was in hospice and she was like on so many medications to like help, like, you know, basically like sedate her so that she wasn't in pain or she wasn't suffering. Like she was gone. Like I remember on the day of my graduation, we went to the hospice care center and I was in my cap and gown. So that way she could at least see me in my cap and gown, because she was really upset that she wouldn't be able to see me walk. And so we went there and, you know, they had me wait in the hall. They like, you know, woke her up. I walk in and she's looking straight past, like looking at me, but looking past me. Like you can tell the way that her vision is. Like she's not focused on me. She's looking at the wall behind me. And she started crying out like, I can't see. I can't see. I can't see.
Oh my God.
And so I that broke me. That broke me, I think, in that moment. So I left the room and I went back to the car and I was just trying to keep it together. Like, oh my God. So my sister wanted to go in and like go and say a goodbye. And I remember telling her, like, you want to remember her the way you remember her.
But is that up to you to decide?
It wasn't my choice, but I just cautioned her. I was like, I think it's better if you just remember Grandma the way that she was, the way that you saw her last time, because this is rough. And she agreed because, like, she saw how rattled I was coming out of that room. So she just decided to stay in the car as well. She didn't want to go and do that.
Now I kind of want to have her here and hear her take on what that was like.
Maybe. If she's around, she's gonna come. I gotta pick her up tomorrow from the airport, so if she's around on Thursday, I might be able to steal her for another episode.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do a part 2 of this with her, just to get another person's take. Maybe we can also pick her brain about other things too.
I don't know if we should talk about our dog yet, because she might not be ready to talk about it.
We'll see where things are at.
Okay.
And that's a big what if, guys. Don't count on this.
Yeah, this is all just like this is not planned. This is an idea being shot right now.
I've also had like a lot of deaths in my family, but mine were all very close. Like my dad died. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, who after he died was the one that was raising me, and then a lot of my uncles who I was also very close with, like, passed away. I had a lot of deaths from like a super young age. Mm-hmm. And while I was raised around a lot of Catholics and knew a lot about the Catholic faith, it never hit me the way it hit other people. I'm very good at, like, compartmentalizing, and so all of my grief was really done in private after my dad died. Mm-hmm. And my acceptance, much like yours with your dog, kind of comes out like a chuckle. Like, for example, I am tutoring my friend. I will call him Good Morning. Okay. And so I'm tutoring Good Morning, and I have my other friend, who I will call Red, who's coming over just to use my computer. Mm-hmm. Red and I weren't even hanging out that day, so I was tutoring Good Morning in the front room about his, like, upcoming math test. Red came in, just went straight to my office, and Red came out and was like, hey, on his way out, like, hey, thanks for letting me use it, good seeing you, we'll have to catch up some later time, hope you had a great Father's Day. And I was like, yes, with my dead dad, we are going to have the best of time. And both of them were like, oh no. But, like, my dad died when I had just turned 12. Yes. And so for me, he's been dead well over a decade. Mm-hmm. Like, he is gone. He's, like, gone. Mm-hmm. I used to, like, feel a presence. I haven't felt his presence in years.
So you and our brother, I'm going to call her Orange Slices, would get along famously because she also loves to make dead dad jokes.
I mean,
it's like a coping mechanism. Like,
it really is. I hadn't had him during, like, most of my puberty, so I never got that, like, rough relationship with your dad. I still have the little kid memories with him. Mm-hmm. But my friend Good Morning, he is, like, 15 years my senior, and we very much have the older brother, younger sister, like, relationship. And he's like, I'll spend Father's Day with you. It's okay. And I was like, you're gonna hang out with your dad. It's fine. I am fine. It was a joke. Let's get back to math. Remind me the area of a circle. I actually did that. I've been texting him math questions, but the way you act during acceptance is also different, which is the whole point I'm getting to. Yeah. And I feel like some of that comes down to, like, what culture you're in and what your, like, personal beliefs about the afterlife is. And this is only pertaining to losses that are, like, death related. Yeah. But, you know, coming from your faith, do you believe that you're going to see everybody again?
That is a little...
Because I know
I was wrestling with this the other day because I know it came from a desperate place, but my mother was, like, talking about how we're going to see our dog in heaven, and I'm like, I don't know if that's true.
I mean, that is the solid belief that many people across the world believe deep down in their heart. Everybody knows I don't believe it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've ever shared my actual belief.
All dogs go to heaven?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a freaking movie franchise about it.
But that's, like, if you believe in the Judeo-Christian heaven, which not everybody does. Yeah.
That's what I believe. But I hesitate because, like, I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't know that he's gonna be there. Not because my dog was a demon.
I was about to ask, is he a bad dog?
No. Just because, like, I struggle to recall anything in the scripture about saying how, like, animal souls are, like, the same as, like, you know, human souls, like, and that there's a spot in heaven for them. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's in there. It's very possible that I could be wrong, but I just can't personally recall scripture that would back that statement up.
Now I'm going to have to go back and read the damn Bible again. I think I've given it away at this point. Yeah. How dare you?
I apologize, but it would be nice. It would be terrific, in fact, if when it is my time, I am greeted by a little dog that looks way too much like a fox for his own good. And he's just, like, waiting there. Nope. And he's just waiting there expectantly at the gate for us. Like, that would be great. Am I gonna hold out for that? No. But I have peace in the recollection of knowing that whatever fate befell him the moment that he left, it is better than the one that was waiting for him here, because he was really going through it. I mean, when his meds started wearing off, like, he just was not himself.
Poor
Like,
thing.
once he came off of his high and he became more alert, like, he was just like,
Man, that's how I want to go out. Super freaking high.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Well, okay, maybe. Maybe that is the way to go out. Like, I know a lot of people say, like, it's probably the best way to die is, like, a lot of people say the best way to die is by the way that you choose to die. So some people want to go out in combat. Some people want to die in their sleep. Some people, I personally think it would be cool if I could die in service of another.
Yeah, that's very on brand for you.
Yeah, right? So it's like, if there was, like, God forbid, there was an active shooter and, like, my sacrifice meant, like, the rest of the people in that place had, like, a fighting chance or, like, could live, then I think I would have peace knowing that's how I'm going out. Like,
Well, you're living in the right country for that.
yeah, right? I was like...
Like, that's terrible to say,
Whoa.
but it's true.
Yeah.
I think the closest to us is Mexico at like 89 a year, and we're up to
Is it?
300 so far. Yeah, it's bad. The stats are bad. And that was the stats of like a month before Roe got overturned. So, yeah. There's also grieving situations, because I definitely grieved over Roe, because my life is now in jeopardy if I continue sleeping with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I live in California, so I'll be fine, but not everybody is going to be fine. And that's all we're going to say on that.
Yeah, we could do like a whole other podcast on that.
We could do a whole other one, and the thing about that is medical jargon is just as obnoxious as like mental health jargon, which is the whole reason we have this podcast, is to talk about the things. Speaking about the things, before we jumped on, Jake gave me a laundry list of cases that he deals with children who are dealing with loss, and not all of them are particularly obvious that the child would be dealing with loss. So do you want to expand on that a little bit earlier?
Yeah, so earlier I had mentioned that while I was going through my training to become a peer specialist, one of the examples posed was that of an active family member going on deployment. And it's different because when we think about like grieving a loss, we instantly go to like, a family member is dead, has died, and the family has to move on now. Another example would be like if there's a divorce and then now mom is dating again, or like there's a stepdad that enters or stepmom that enters the field, like how the kids would have to adjust to this new like family dynamic of like things are different and things definitely change, and how am I going to react to that? But something that is rarely discussed, that the book actually like discussed and touched on, was that of like the active military family, and how the parents are still together in that situation, but it's different because unlike most families where mom and dad just do a 9 to 5 and they're back home with, little Timmy and Sally for dinner each night, like there are many nights where like, mom is having dinner with like the kids and there's a chair that's empty that belongs to dad or, mom, or vice versa, whatever the family dynamic is. There's a chair that's empty that could potentially be filled, and they have to just like deal with that until, their adult or parent or guardian comes back home.
If they come back home.
And that's the other thing too, is if they come back home. That's pretty scary too. My cousin had to go through something similar to that with his father. My uncle is CHP. Mm-hmm. And so one thing growing up that I remember is my cousin never wanted to like spend the night at our house. Like when we would have like, sleepovers and stuff, he would always like call his mom like really late and get picked up. He would never stay till morning.
Okay.
And I always thought that was weird until later on, I remembered something my mom had said, and she explained to me that, like, he wants to be home to listen for the car.
Oh.
You know?
Poor thing.
Because every time my uncle went out on the job, it was never, like, even though he used CHP,
yeah,
it was never a for sure thing that he was going to come home after his shift. And we've heard stories, too, about, like, times people, like, I mean, he shares them, like, so flippantly at, like, family, like, get-togethers, like, times where people have drawn, like, guns on him. Like, routine car stops, or, like, he's just walking up and, like, talking to some people, like, asking about, like, you know, have you seen, like, you know, any sort of suspicious activity? And then next thing he knows, like, someone's got a gun in his face, and, like, he's now in a fight for his life, or something like that. And there was one time where he was on the road, and a drunk driver hit him and flipped his car. And, yeah. That was pretty intense.
Your poor cousin sounds a little traumatized overall.
Well, this was later on in life, was the car thing, and he never talked about work when we were younger, but, like, the danger was still there. Like, you know, I think even as young as we were, like, he was aware that, like, his dad did a very dangerous job, and he was just afraid. But when we got older, he started talking about all of the things that happened to him on the job, and, like, it's like, okay, so the fear was definitely merited, because these things that he's sharing so, like, proudly are definitely, like, terrifying to think of. Like, this is what you do for a living? Oh my god. The thing with the car was particularly scary, because after the car had flipped and rolled, he then had to, like, fight his way out of the car, because, like, cop cars are really terribly designed oftentimes, and they will explode.
Like a movie.
Like in the movies, but, like, legit. Like, when the car gets overturned, and if there's, like, a fuel leak, like, it will catch fire and then ignite and explode the car. So he had to get out of the car as fast as he could, make his way down the road, and then his car did catch on fire, and he, like a maniac, had, like, cell phone video of, like, his squad car on fire, and he's like, well, that's unfortunate. Just like, dude, you were in that, like, a second ago. And I guess that's just how he is desensitized to it, maybe, and, like, how he copes. But, like, it's so wild. But anyways, all that is to say, like, there is definitely different levels and layers to loss and grief that, like, we don't hardly think of. Like, that is in itself, like, a layer of, like, grief. When you think about it, like, the constant, like, having to, like, become okay with the idea of losing your parent at any sort of moment, or getting the news at any sort of moment.
And not having any control over the situation.
Yeah.
So, real quick, because we're getting close to the end, let's list off every single instance that you can consider a justified thing to grieve over. I'd say a breakup, a divorce, a friendship dissolving, moving to a different stage in your life.
Yep.
Of course, like, any kind of death or perceived death. I say even worse so if the person is missing and unfound. What about you?
I would say probably one would, and you might not think anything of this, but, like, probably moving out for the first time.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely something there that I think would be part of, like, the grieving process. You took, like, all of mine.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no.
Losing a job?
Oh, yeah, for sure, losing a job. Perhaps maybe, like, graduating.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, graduating.
It's like you're having the script flipped on you a little bit there.
Alright, guys, so all of these situations are valid to have all of those big feelings, no matter how big or how small. And I'm sure there's ones that we forgot about.
Yeah, certainly that's not all of them. No. That's just, I was struggling to name more than, like, what you mentioned.
I'm sorry.
So if it's not on the list, get over it, I guess. No.
Oh, no.
No.
We'll link them in the show notes.
No.
Yeah, we'll have a list of sadness.
No, your feelings are valid. You can grieve what you want to grieve. It's fine.
All right, last minute advice.
I think I'm going to stick with that. It's okay to grieve over the things that you grieve over. Okay. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
And I'm going to remind you that it is okay to grieve in whatever way you need, as long as you're not physically or mentally harming or sexually harming somebody else.
That's also good advice.
Yes. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Maybe it'll be a surprise week with a certain person's sister, where we can interrogate her on a bunch of weird random stuff regarding mental health.
Oh my god.
And maybe it'll be something else. We're not sure yet. I'm not making any promises.
Me neither.
Goodbye.
See ya. Join the conversation. Find us on social media at It's Working Podcast or link below.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next week.
Be kind to yourself and to others.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
Sarah and Scooter Podcast is a conversation between
You guessed it.
Sarah,
And Scooter. We are not experts on any of these topics.
just hoping to spark something like an idea, conversation, or even a revelation.
Subjects will vary depending on our friends, family, and community.
Sometimes it will be what we want to talk about.
New episodes drop every week on all of your favorite podcast formats.
So pull up a chair and
And let's talk about stuff.